So if you were paying attention to that, you might realize in our study of Revelation, we're entering some strange bits of the story. We're going to have a bunch of characters coming today, and then like next week, there's going to be a beast and another beast. And if you read Revelation, these are times when you might think, what in the world are these characters? What do they mean? Are they one particular, historical character or whatever? But I think we can make sense of what's going on here. So if Revelation chapter 12 was not clear to you, if you read it on your own, hopefully by the end of the next 30 minutes, it will become a little more clear. But a few weeks ago, I found this image, and I really like this because, to me, this is like life. If we can just get through this month, we only have one more month to go before we need to get through another month. And this is how I process life all the time. It's just, if I can get through this, I often think if I can just get through this next thing, then it's going to be better. But when I get through that time, when I think it's going to be better, or when I get to that point, I'm like, I've got to get through another week or another month, or if I can get just through this period. And this is the way I think every summer for the last, 10, 20 years, beginning of the summer, I have hopes about what I'm going to do, and I'm going to get some things done. I'm going to get a chance to rest or get this done at home or whatever. And at the end of every summer, literally, I'm always disappointed at the summer. And the summer never happened like I thought it was going to be. Stupidly, the next summer I have high hopes. This summer will be different than last summer. Yeah, last summer was a disappointment, but this next summer is going to be different, and it's never different. It never changes, and life is just one month after another. And if we can get through this month, we'll just have another month we have to get through in order to get through the next month. Another image that I saw this week, one day we will wake up and hear coronavirus has ended. I think that's in quotation marks because I think the person who posted that sort of thinks that the whole thing is more or less a hoax. I think he's more into the conspiracy sort of things, and so he thinks someone is going to announce it ended, just as they announced that it was here. But honestly, hopefully we're going to get through this. I don't know when it's going to be. It's probably going to be later rather than sooner. But at some point, what we're dealing with coronavirus is going to be more or less resolved. And so we might think, oh, good, when we get to that point, life is going to be back to normal. And one of the things Revelation is trying to tell us is that thought that somehow if we can just get through this, things are going to get better. Revelation is trying to reveal to us that that's not really how life works. Last week, Nanad in his sermon used this image, and I want to go back to this before we get into Revelation chapter 12, just so we can see what's going on and where we are. There's this pattern of 7. So there were these 7 churches, the specific messages to the 7 churches. And different events happened in John's vision, and we talked about that. Then last week, there's this new set of 77 trumpets, and when the trumpet blasted, there was a kind of adjustment or something that came. And one way that people understand the book of Revelation is that it's telling a chronological story from beginning to end. And so each of these things are successive events that happen in history. And so we're somewhere in that progression. That's one Revelation is often. Here in this case, that's not the way I understand the book of Revelation. These different judges, the seals and the bowls are cling through the same kind. It's not chronological, but there's pattern 4 and then 3, and 3, 4 and then 3. There's a literary pattern, not so much a historical pattern, but a literary pattern. And when to the end of them, and pick up another 7. And so you might think, 7 seals. Oh, we're kind of done with that bad happening. Remember, there were horsemen and all kind of thing, and we might, if we got through that, we can go back to the form and Revelation. No, sorry, not getting back to the story. Doesn't the thing coming? So as I said last week, if John finished the book after these sections, we would think it was early terminated. It's at the end of the 7 trumpet section. There's this thing that seems like it's the story. It's a victory. Oh, Jesus attacked, and now and he subdued enemies, and yay, it's over. But it's not. We still have 7 bowls in front of us, and John is healing in Revelation is that we have to be ready. Life is going to us. I mean, I don't know if you remember, I preached a sermon about the being prepared, planning for being prepared for the future with the expectation that life, and it probably won't. Okay, coronavirus will go at some point, but something else is going to come in our lifetime. It might be worse, it might be not quite so bad, but there's just going to be more and more of the same. And what Revelation is about partially is this is a picture of life. It has this highly symbolic language to tell us that life is not normal and comfortable and easy. And it's not going to get better. When you think you've gotten through it, you haven't gotten through it. You still have to remain alert. You still have to think. You still have to endure. This is why the word endurance is important for the book of Revelation, because we're going to keep cycling through these same kinds of events. I mean, what we're facing now with coronavirus, it's happened before. I mean, there was the great flu epidemic of 1918, before any of us were born. But it's happened before. Something like it's going to happen again. And why is it happening? We're going to begin to see part of an answer today. But the point is, it's just going on and on. And one of the things that is happening in Revelation that we talked about is that there's always another empire that's coming down the road. For the first readers, they're thinking Rome, but Rome ended and there's another empire, and it's the same story that's happening all through history. And so we have to be careful to not become complacent. To think, now I can relax. I can just take a deep breath and sit back a little bit. We can't be complacent because a new thing is coming. And these empires that I've talked about are going to come in many different forms. Sometimes it's going to be an empire, like Rome or Napoleon or whatever. But sometimes it's going to be an economic empire, or it might be a cultural empire. But this powerful entity that is trying to teach us what is truly valuable and how we ought to live, and if we're going to succeed in life, we have to cooperate with those values. Whether they do it at the point of a sword, or the point of a gun, or they do it by some other kinds of means through propaganda or whatever, all these different kinds of empires are trying to tell us how to live. I mean, here in Latvia, once upon a time, Latvia was part of this empire of the Soviet Union. And as we've said before, this building is a monument to that. Well, that empire ended. No longer was Latvia under that kind of control, and now Latvia is free. It's got its own government. It can do what it wants. But the reality is a whole other set of values become a temptation. For instance, often here it was like, okay, now we're free to make money. And we're going to pursue economic success. But that's just a whole other empire telling you this is what you need to do to live. This is what's valuable. This building, once upon a time, was the tallest building in Riga. Do you know what building became the next tallest building after this one? Anyone? What? No, not Hotel Westwood. Schwedbank building. That's taller than this. It's not accidental that it's taller. Architecture has meaning. It's a whole other kind of empire. I mean, for some of us, Schwedbank controls us, you know. I mean, my money's in Schwedbank, and I owe them a lot of money, and I'm going to be paying them a lot of money for years to come. You know, but it's an economic empire that has a lot of control and is telling us what's valuable, what's important. What does success look like? So it's not accidental that that's a taller building. I mean, Sigmund Freud would have a fun time talking about, you know, these tall buildings and what they mean. But what I'm saying is there's always another kind of empire, and it's going to come in very different kinds of forms, but we always have to be aware of it because it's telling us what's important and how to live. And it's telling us if you're going to succeed, you've got to wear these kind of clothes. And if you're going to succeed, you've got to live in this kind of house. If you're going to succeed, you've got to have these kind of friends. If you're going to succeed, you've got to drive this kind of car. If you're going to succeed, you've got to have this kind of education. And it's still, empires are still trying to control our lives and communicate what's important. We're always going to have to face these temptations. Okay? And so why? Why is it always this? Why is there always something this kind of wants to come before our eyes and tell us what's important and tell us how to live? And Revelation chapter 12 is going to begin to tell us why that's happening, why it's going to continue to happen, what's going on behind the scenes. And so, in this chapter, we have a cast of characters. In the next few chapters, we're going to add characters to the story, but especially in Revelation chapter 12, there's 4 characters, and one is this woman who's with child, and she's about to deliver a child. And so, who is this woman? There's a son that is born. There's a dragon, and then there's Michael. We're told a little bit more about the dragon and Michael. Michael is an angel. He's one of the few angels that are named in the Bible. He generally appears as a kind of warrior, as a defender of Israel and a defender of God's purposes. This dragon is going to be identified clearly for us as well. John is going to tell us he's Satan. He's the devil. He's the serpent. In fact, John is going to give a bunch of more specific names for this dragon. You know, all the different ways in which he was understood in the ancient world. John is trying to say, this is him. You know, this kind of enemy in your mythology or whatever. There's something behind it. A real being. He's Satan. He's a dragon. And he will appear in different forms. So, for instance, Egypt could be considered a dragon. Babylon, there's a dragon. And the point of that is to say behind all these empires lies another figure, Satan. But first, who is this woman and who is this son? The son that is born seems fairly clearly to be the Messiah. He's born and he's going to be born to rule. Okay, so if the son is the Messiah, we might think, okay, then this woman is that Mary, the mother of Jesus? And when I was first reading Revelation 12, in like this last summer when I was doing a lot of reading in Revelation, trying to think about this series, I thought, okay, that's just Mary. That's Mary and Jesus, Mary and Jesus. And as I was reading more and also getting help from some other commentaries and so forth, I realized that this kind of yes and no question. Is this woman Mary? Kind of yes, kind of no. And if that seems like a strange answer, it's really not, because we've seen in the book of Revelation already how things have a lot of meaning. These symbols have meaning, sometimes multiple meanings, or they have several pointers. And so this woman is kind of Mary, kind of more than Mary. And one of the passages that helps us with this woman is in Isaiah chapter 66, because we're going to meet a woman who's also a child. In Isaiah chapter 66, it says, before she goes into labor, she gives birth. Before the pains come upon her, she delivers a son. Who's ever heard such a thing? Who's ever seen such things? Country be born in a
or an infant be brought forth in a moment. No sooner dying in. Now this in Isaiah 6 becomes this kind of idealized Israel. No sooner Zion and labor gives birth to children. To a moment of birth, give delivery. Do I use the womb when I bring to deliver God? Joyce with Jerusalem, glad for her, all who love her. Greatly with her, who mourn over. For you curse and be satisfied at her comfort. You will drink deep and delight flowing abundantly. For the Lord says, extend peace to her like a river, wealth of nations like a stream. That phrase is going to be used on in Revelation, actually. So you've got this image in Isaiah 6 of a woman giving birth, and Isaiah 6, she's kind of giving to Israel. She kind of is Israel, but she is giving birth to the people of God. See that kind of in phrases, the father or motherland. So the land kind of mother, birth to the people. And so, I mean, there's the phrase Masha, the land that its birth. And so that's kind of this woman is in Revelation chapter. She's forth the people of God, like she's always done. All history, the people of God have been produced or going on and on. In one sense, this woman married. If you remember last week, Nana gave us this great illustration. Is testing that you put inside other. Really a good image. Back to this image happening in Revelation, where the same pattern is being repeated. You similar kind of. It's a little bit okay, but a little bit the same. And so, in one sense, if we these, and you might notice symbolism where
it's a building, it's a city, it's a church, it's a land that is also giving birth here. And so in this series of how God is using Israel to bring forth his people, one particular instance of that is the story of Mary and Jesus. Okay, so this woman is kind of Mary, or Mary is one particular example of this woman. Okay, but it's not just Mary, it's how God gives birth to his people. In Revelation chapter 12, we have this image of, the woman's about to give birth, but the dragon is waiting right there to kill the child. And of course, if you remember the story of the birth of Jesus, you remember that is what happened with Jesus. There was King Herod, who wanted to get rid of the child. Why? Well, because that child was going to be a threat to his own throne and a threat to the Roman Empire. And so King Herod, who was faithful to the Roman Empire, for the sake of that power, thought, okay, I've got to kill this baby. Next week, we're going to talk about the beast from the sea and then another beast from the land. And as I'll explain next week, for the original readers of Revelation, that beast from the sea is the Roman Empire. The other beast is kind of the client kings who supported the Roman Empire, like King Herod. So one of the things Revelation is kind of giving us a lens to see is when we look at the birth of Jesus, we realize that behind King Herod, a beast, there's a bigger beast, the Roman Empire. But behind the Roman Empire, there was the dragon, there was Satan, who was trying to destroy God's plan, but he failed. So in Revelation chapter 12, we have this ongoing conflict, and the chapter ends when then the dragon was enraged at the woman because God had delivered the woman. The woman got away and went off to make war against the rest of her offspring, which is now the church. I mean, The woman gave birth to the child, the Messiah, and this Messiah has a people that are now called the church. And so the dragon is now enraged, not just with the woman, but with her offspring. That is, those who obey God's commandments and hold to the testimony of Jesus. And what John is trying to tell us here is this is why. This is why life is like it is and why it's going to go on. It's because we have this enemy. Because there's a war going on. And we are in the midst of a war. It's behind the scenes, but it's still going on. So there's this ongoing conflict. It's the dragon against the Messiah and his people, against Jesus and his followers. It's against Christ and the church. And if we belong to those people, the followers of Jesus, then if we've got an enemy fighting against us, it's no surprise. It's no surprise if we experience pain and difficulty. So one thing John is revealing to us is that the battle is going on, and he also is revealing to us why it's not necessarily going to get better. And what Revelation chapter 12 is explaining is that because Satan is losing, and we'll come back to that, he is extra enraged. And now he's just lashing out, trying to cause the maximum damage. And if any of you happen to read military history, you can find this often in wars when there comes a point when clearly one side is going to lose. And there's nothing that can reverse that. But almost never do people just stop fighting then. Oh, well, okay, war's over, we'll stop. They just keep fighting, sometimes for more than a year. And sometimes even greater atrocities happen at the end of the war, even when everyone knows the war is really over. We know who's going to win, we know who's going to lose, but the losing side just won't stop. They just keep killing and killing and killing. Revelation chapter 12. This is where we are in history, and this is why the story's not ending yet. So Revelation 12 is revealing to us why the battle seems to be raging so fiercely, but it's also revealing to us that ultimate victory is going to happen. So in the middle of this chapter, with these scenes of warfare, it says, "Then I heard a loud voice shouting across the heavens, 'It's happened at last! The salvation and power and kingdom of our God, the authority of his Christ. For the accuser has been thrown down to earth, the one who accused our brothers and sisters before our God day and night. But they defeated him because of the blood of the Lamb and because of their testimony. They were not afraid to die. Rejoice, O heavens, and you who live in the heavens, rejoice. But terror will come on the earth and the sea, for the devil has come down to you in great anger, and he knows he has just a little time, a little kairos. He's got this little moment when he can try to cause maximum damage before he is utterly defeated. And so he's trying to seize that little opportunity to do this damage. And this is this point in time where we are, even though we know that ultimate victory is coming. So in this chapter, we have this image of a cosmic war that is happening behind the scenes. Okay, so a number of times I've kind of to try to clarify Revelation. We've got this action that's going on the stage. But behind the stage, there's a lot of things going on. And so behind the scenes of what the original readers see in their life, there's another cosmic warfare that's going on. And that's what Revelation chapter 12 is revealing. Okay, but then there's physical action that is happening on the stage. And that's also communicated in symbols. But next week, when we begin to talk about this beast and the other beast, we're going to have other characters that are going to come on the stage. We're going to see what it looks like in history. But behind that is this other battle that's going on between Michael and his angels and Satan and his angels, and it's going on, and it's going on. And this is what is being represented to us here. So a war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought with the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought, but they did not prevail, nor was a place found for them in heaven any longer. So the great dragon was cast out, the serpent of old, called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. He was cast to the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. And again, all the different ways in which he's been understood in history: a serpent, as a dragon, devil or Satan. All these different images for the enemy, John is kind of pulling back the layers and saying that's actually Satan who's been doing this supernatural enemy, an enemy of God, an enemy of you, and he's the one who is really doing this. He's your true enemy, not these people on the stage. They're not your real enemy. It's the enemy behind the scene. But the question is, when and how did this happen, or will this happen, or is this happening? When was this time when the dragon was cast out and cast to the earth? And it's a hard question to answer because both with hints in the Old Testament and with kind of the world views of people back 2,000 years ago when this was written, it's hard to pinpoint when was this, because there's some traditions that the Jewish people have that maybe at the story of creation, that's when Satan rebelled against God, and that's when God cast him out of heaven. There's actually some hints in the New Testament of a time around Noah and the flood when some angels rebelled against God, and that's when they were cast out of heaven and cast to the earth, or cast in some kind of prison, or wherever they were sent to. There's that tradition. Others who take the book of Revelation as all in the future have to say, well, this is something else that's going to happen in the future. And it's hard to sort out here. This is one of those difficult texts in Revelation. And you might even wonder, what was Satan doing there in the first place? If you read the book of Job in the Old Testament, you've got this scene. The whole book of Job revolves around this dialogue between God and Satan. And you have this scene in Job chapter 1 where the sons of God are gathering like a council with God, these supernatural angelic beings, and among them in heaven comes Satan, this accuser. You might think, what is he doing there? But in that scene, he's there and he's talking to God and he's doing his job of accusing Job, and the whole book of Job is kind of how that unfolds with the accusation of Satan, about Job. So, what's going on there? What is Satan doing there? And again, when was he cast down? When John is writing this, what is he thinking? I don't want to say I'm 100% certain of the answer to that, but I think I have a very strong idea of what is in John's mind about when this happened and how it happened. And how this really has to do with us, and it really applies to us. You might think that this war in heaven has nothing to do with us. It's behind the scenes. Thankfully Michael does that, and we don't have to worry about this. But there's some interesting things that happen in the Gospels that have a lot of connections with Revelation chapter 12 that, in my mind, really explain what's going on here. And one of the places is in John chapter 12. And Jesus is speaking, and he says, the prince of this world will now be cast out. And when I am lifted up from the earth, talking about his crucifixion, I will draw all men to myself. This translation that I found this image of is not even the best translation. There's a greater emphasis on the word now. Jesus says, now is the time for judgment. Now, the prince of this world is going to be cast out. And why does Jesus say now? What's happening then where Jesus is saying, now it's happening? A few verses earlier, Jesus entered Jerusalem for the last week of his life before the crucifixion. So he's facing his death in a few days. But this scene starts with a couple of Greek people who were in Jerusalem for the festival. And they come to some of Jesus' disciples and they say, we would like to see Jesus. And so a couple of Jesus' disciples are bringing these Greek guys to Jesus. And we're never actually told about a dialogue between Jesus and these Greek people. When the disciples come to Jesus, that just leaves Jesus to talk about the meaning of what's happening. And he's saying, okay, now is the hour when I'm going to be lifted up in crucifixion, but then exalted in resurrection and ascension. But basically the idea is when Jesus sees these Greek people, these non-Jewish people, the nations, every tribe and tongue, people and language, when Jesus sees them, that's when Jesus is saying, this is why. Those guys, those Greek people too, this is why I'm coming to this hour. They are the fruit. They are the fruit of my life. They are my mission. I'm here on a mission, and there they are. Those guys, those Greek people, along with the Jewish people. They are why I am here. John chapter 12 is about the mission of Jesus, about his death, but also about the fruit that he bears. And it's then, at that moment, when Jesus is thinking not just about his death, but about the purpose of his death and those nations that he's dying for, then he says, now is when it's happening. In this moment, in this scene, this is the defeat of Satan. This is when Satan loses the war. Similarly, in Luke chapter 10, Jesus sends out 70 of his disciples to go to the different towns that he's going to go to, and they're supposed to prepare the way. They're supposed to announce the kingdom of God is near. It's coming. It's like, it's right behind me. That's their message. It's right behind me. The kingdom it's coming. It's on the road. And they're announcing the kingdom to the villages in Israel at that time. And they're performing some miracles. They're healing the sick and that kind of thing. These 70 disciples. And after they completed this mission, they gathered back to Jesus to report what they've done. So it says, the 70 returned with joy. They returned with joy. They said, Lord, even the demons are subject to us in your name. And he said, I saw Satan fall like lightning. I mean, think about what those words had to have meant to them. Jesus stamped approval on their mission. In fact, he's telling them, you guys don't even understand how important it is what your mission was. This is what you were doing. You thought you were just, okay, you had this little stressful, scary mission. You had to go give this message. You might not have known what you were doing and so forth, because they had never done anything like this before. And you thought I was just sending you as just a little messenger boys. And Jesus is saying, in your mission was the defeat of Satan. This is what you were doing. This was the significance of what you were doing. You were part of this warfare. It wasn't just Michael in heaven. You were part of this warfare. You were an instrument in the defeat of Satan, and you did that because of your faithful witness. And one of the amazing things about Luke chapter 10 is that it's a story that's not told in the other Gospels. In Luke chapter 9, there's a story where Jesus sends out the 12, And Matthew and Mark also give that story of, the 12 were sent out on a mission. But this is a different story. This isn't just the 12. This isn't just those first disciples. It's not just the apostles. This is 70 others. Keep in mind the word 70, the importance of 70 and what that represents. These 70 people sent on that mission, they represent us. They are us. And when Luke writes the book of Acts, he's just continuing that story from the 70 to multitudes of missionaries that are spreading out. And this is the significance of Luke chapter 10, because it's about us. It's a model for us. It's about faithful witnesses that we are supposed to be. And it's about the meaning of our faithful witness. And I think when John writes about this moment in Revelation chapter 12, when Satan is cast down, the moment he's probably thinking about is that moment that he heard when he heard Jesus' words in John chapter 12. And what he heard when he heard Jesus' words in Luke chapter 10. That's the when and the how. It happened in the mission of Jesus and in the mission of his followers. And how it happens is by his followers continuing that mission. So in a very real sense, the defeat of Satan lies in the mission of the church. And so this is why Satan is warring on not just Jesus, but on his church, because it's in our mission that he is being defeated. And it's no wonder he's angry. It's no wonder that he's lashing out. It's no wonder that he's not going to try to make our lives easy necessarily. Another interesting thing is revealed in Luke chapter 10. At that time, Jesus, full of joy, the 70 return with joy. They're experiencing joy. But it's amazing to me that Jesus is experiencing joy. I mean, do you ever wonder, what is it that people want? There's someone that you want to make happy, maybe when you're kids, it's your parents, and you're like, what do my parents want? I wish I knew what they wanted. Or some girl, what is it that she wants? What do women want? You've seen probably that meme of, the big book of, how to make a woman happy. What do people want? What do people want of me? What will make you happy? Well, we know what makes Jesus happy. He's full of joy through the Holy Spirit. He says, I praise you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, because you have hidden these things from the wise and the learned. The wise and the learned. What I'm talking about was hidden to all those guys. They didn't understand it. Unfortunately for them, they were born in another kind of empire with another kind of value system. And they probably didn't get the message. Probably no one told them what I'm trying to say now. You've hidden it from the wise and learned, but you've revealed it to little children. Yes, Father, this is what you are pleased to do. Revealed, that's the word apocalypse. Revelation is a revelation. It's an apocalypse. And this is apocalypse to us. It's revealed to us, this message. John chapter 12 and Luke chapter 10 is about these faithful witnesses. And these are the same faithful witnesses that come up again in Revelation chapter 12. They overcame him first by the blood of the Lamb, of course. First by the work of Jesus, not by their own effort. They couldn't do it on their own. The Lamb is the one who brings the victory, but they also overcome by the word of their testimony. And they didn't love their lives even to the death. If it meant death, they didn't love their own lives more than they loved their Lord Jesus. what I'm trying to emphasize here, what I think is the takeaway from Revelation chapter 12, is that once again, it's not about some other people somewhere else. It's not a message for some people in the future, some other time or place. John is revealing to us the people that we ought to be and want to become and want to emulate. He's telling us, be these kind of people. And what Luke was communicating is the people who do this are actually the joyful people. The people who do this, who remain faithful witnesses, are the ones who bring joy to Jesus. These faithful witnesses are the true heroes. Now, one of the problems with any kind of empire, whether it's an empire or an economic empire or cultural empire, is they're constantly telling us who the heroes are, who's important. And you know who these are, and you just see who is asked to be on, let's say, a television commercial advertisement. You know, I've never been asked. Of course not. I mean, there's nothing heroic about me in their eyes. I'm not esteemed in anyone's eyes. But we know who the heroes of society is. In some places, it's the athletes. Stories about athletes, and you interview athletes and so forth. It might be entertainers. I mean, this is kind of the two big objects of worship in America: athletes and entertainers. Athletes and entertainers. But every empire has heroes, people who they lift up and say, "Be like this." Emulate them. Generally, it's people who want to build up that empire, who support the values of that empire, who maybe die or even kill for the sake of that empire. Those are the heroes. That's not how Jesus evaluates. Jesus doesn't call heroes anyone that the empire calls heroes. Jesus doesn't listen to the values of other people about who's important and who's a hero. Been revealed to us who are heroes, and the truth is, you are more heroes than almost anyone else who's lifted up as a hero anywhere in this world. This is one of the times I get frustrated with just using words. I know this can sound like just a pep talk. It's like, your kid does a piece of art, does a drawing, and you put it up on the refrigerator. Oh, that's lovely, and so forth. And you know it's really bad. But, it's that, or, I years ago when our boys were younger and they were playing football, and I was kind of helping with football training, and Brendan was on a team that was, they were just bad. I mean, they lost every game. They were just a bunch of little 5-year-old screw-ups, seriously. They were just really, really bad, But you can't tell them, you can't tell a 5-year-old kid, at halftime, man, you guys just were really stinking up the field. I mean, seriously, you should just get, you don't do that. You can do it. You did great, kids. I'm not doing that. That's not what I'm trying to do this morning, just give this pep talk and say, yay, you. That's really not what I'm trying to do. I really am trying to communicate what I truly believe is the viewpoint of Jesus Christ, of who he values, of who is important in his purposes, of who is heroic in his eyes. And the people all through history, I think, who have largely been heroic in the eyes of Jesus have been unknown to people around them. And no one would look at them and think, oh, that's an admirable person. I would like to be like that person. But Jesus is trying to change our values. In Revelation is trying to change our values and reveal to us what's important, who we want to be, truly. Who is heroic? Who's a hero? And I'm guessing that none of you, I might be wrong, I mean, I don't know maybe what kind of life you had before you came to Latvia, but I'm guessing that none of you sitting here, was ever been called a hero by a bunch of people. I mean, maybe one or two of you rescued someone, that could happen, or rescued an animal or something. I mean, it might have happened, but I'm guessing that none of us has been recognized as heroic by any large or important group of people. And I want us just to see and remember the significance of who we are and what we do. It's in what we do, maybe in our quiet little witness, that Satan is defeated. No one does anything more important than that. Really, no one ever in the history of the world has done anything more important. If in our witness is the defeat of Satan, who has done something better and more important to defeat Satan? No one has. It's in our faithful witness. Wow, what a privilege we have, and no wonder those disciples turn with joy to think, wow, I got to do that. We get to do that. We get to participate in the mission of Jesus and the defeat of Satan. Lord, even when I say those words, it doesn't even seem believable. I'm not sure I can make myself believe that. So I pray as this week presses on us and we feel insignificant and small, if we feel like we're not making a difference, remind us, Father, of the difference that our life makes and can make through our simple, faithful witness. Amen. We'll sing one more song and then we'll be done for the day.